There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when something inside you awakens. You are no longer merely living. You are aware that you are living. And in that instant, a subtle fracture appears between you and the world. What once seemed natural, the laughter of friends, the morning light, the pulse of routine, suddenly feels distant, as if you are watching your own life unfold from behind a glass wall. You can still touch, still breathe, still move through the same patterns, yet everything carries the faint echo of unreality. This is the first mark of awakening, to see life not as a participant, but as a witness. And though it may appear like enlightenment, it feels at first like loss. There was a time when you moved unconsciously, when joy required no justification, when you believed your life would unfold along some invisible line of meaning. But then awareness widened. You began to see the machinery beneath existence, the impermanence, the absurd repetition, the fragile scaffolding of purpose. You saw that happiness was conditional, that love fades, that everything you build will eventually be swallowed by time. And this realization, this raw, unfiltered vision, felt like falling through the surface of things into an endless depth you never knew existed. Most people turn away when they glimpse that abyss. They drown themselves in distraction, in noise, in certainty. But if you're still here, listening, watching, feeling, it means you didn't turn away. You chose to look, and in choosing to look, you crossed a threshold that few ever acknowledge, the point where consciousness becomes both your gift and your torment. To awaken is to inherit a terrible privilege, to perceive what others ignore, to feel the weight of existence pressing through every silence. The ancient mystics called it the fall from grace. Modern psychology calls it existential crisis. But in truth, it is neither curse nor flaw. It is the first trembling breath of the real. You begin to understand that the despair you feel is not proof of something broken inside you. It is paradoxically a sign of depth, a natural consequence of seeing life clearly. To be human is to straddle two realms, the instinctive animal who lives, eats and sleeps within nature, and the reflective self who stands apart, questioning the very meaning of its own being. We are, as Jung said, the species that became conscious of its own existence. And with that consciousness came suffering, the unavoidable price of awareness. Think of the child who stares at the stars for the first time and realizes how small they are. Think of the philosopher who spends sleepless nights wondering why there is something rather than nothing. Think of yourself, alone in your room, feeling that eerie sense that life is happening through you. Not for you. All of them share the same secret. They have glimpsed the invisible architecture of life, and it terrified them. But here lies the paradox, the quiet, almost sacred twist. Within that terror, within that despair, something beautiful begins to move. Because despair is not the end of meaning. It is the moment meaning begins to reveal itself differently. It strips away illusion, comfort, and false certainty, leaving you naked before the truth of existence. And in that nakedness, in that terrifying honesty, something luminous starts to appear. A fragile awareness that perhaps even without guarantees, life itself is enough. The quiet realization, then, is not merely the loss of innocence. It is the birth of perception. It is the point at which the mind stops taking reality for granted and starts to see it as a living mystery. And though this realization first appears as despair, it carries within it the seed of transformation. For only those who descend into the emptiness can learn to see its hidden light. The next question then arises naturally, inevitably. If awareness brings both beauty and despair, why does the same light that awakens us also burn us? We live surrounded by movement, screens flickering, clocks ticking, cars rushing, people speaking. Every corner of life hums with noise, with constant distraction. Yet beneath all of it, if you stand still long enough, you can feel something else, a silence. A hollow echo that reverberates beneath the rhythm of everyday existence. It's an emptiness that cannot be named, only felt, like the quiet after a storm or the pause between heartbeats. Most people never truly face it. They sense its presence for a moment, in the loneliness between messages, in the sudden sadness after laughter, and quickly turn away. They fill it with movement, conversation, consumption, anything to drown out the abyss beneath the ordinary. We tell ourselves that life has structure, We have careers, goals, relationships, schedules. We wake, work, sleep, repeat, believing that the pattern itself will keep us safe. But structure is not substance. When the pattern breaks, when a job ends, when love fades, when the future turns uncertain, the silence returns, vast and unforgiving. It's then that we realize something we were never taught to confront, that the foundation beneath modern life is paper thin. That beneath the laughter, the endless scrolling, the metrics of success, there is a gnawing question we spend our lives avoiding. Why do I feel empty, even when nothing is wrong? This is the quiet epidemic of the age, not hunger, not war, not disease, but the starvation of meaning, a collective numbness disguised as normality. We've built entire civilizations around avoiding the abyss. We turn the unknown into entertainment, the sacred into algorithms, and the inner self into a brand. The modern world teaches us how to function, not how to feel. It rewards efficiency, not depth, performance, not truth. And so we become actors in our own lives and rehearsing identities, mimicking passion, pretending we know who we are. We smile for the world while silently drowning in the question we dare not ask. What if this isn't all there is? For Jung, this collective denial of the soul's reality was the greatest tragedy of modernity. He saw in the collective sleep a psychic defense, a way for humanity to shield itself from the unbearable weight of consciousness. To look inward is to risk madness. To stay asleep is to remain comfortably sane. And so most choose sleep, but there are always a few who can't. The ones who see the flicker beneath the mask of daily life. So they look around and realize that the rituals of modernity, the morning commute, the small talk, the weekend escape, are not answers, but distractions. They sense something holy and broken behind the veil, as if life itself is whispering, "There's more." This whisper is the beginning of despair, and also, paradoxically, the beginning of freedom. Because to hear it means the illusions are cracking. It means the soul is waking up from the anesthesia of culture. To perceive the abyss is not a sign of weakness, it's a mark of vision. It means you've seen through the veil of the ordinary and glimpsed the raw, terrifying essence of existence. And though that vision may isolate you, it also connects you to something deeper than belonging, to truth itself. Nietzsche once wrote, "When you look long into an abyss, the abyss also looks into you." But he never meant this as a warning alone, but it was an invitation. To look into the abyss is to engage with the unknown within yourself, to let it strip away every lie until only what is real remains. This is the strange paradox of awakening. The more you see, the less you can return to ignorance. You can no longer pretend that the world's noise is enough. The music of ordinary life loses its rhythm. The conversations sound rehearsed. The colors feel slightly desaturated. At first, this realization feels like a curse, as if you've lost something essential. But slowly, with time, you begin to understand that this disillusionment is not destruction. It is the first light of clarity. You start to see the beauty in the cracks, the faint glow that seeps through what once felt meaningless. You begin to sense that maybe, just maybe, the emptiness was never an absence, but a space, a silent, sacred opening waiting for something real to emerge. So the abyss beneath the ordinary isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. It whispers in moments of stillness, reminding you that what you've been chasing, status, pleasure, distraction, were only shadows of what your soul truly seeks. Not comfort, not certainty, but contact with the living pulse of reality itself. And yet, this realization brings with it a deeper pain, a recognition that the self you've been living as might not be your true self at all. That behind every role, every identity, every mask, something unlived waits aching to be born. It is here, in this fragile space between despair and discovery, that the next stage of the journey begins, the confrontation with the self you left behind. There comes a moment, often after the chaos of awakening has settled into silence, when you begin to see something unsettling in your reflection. Not just your face, but the faint outline of another self standing quietly behind your eyes. This figure is not imaginary. It is you, or rather the you that could have been, the unlived self, the shadow of possibilities that never came to light. When you stare long enough into your own depths, the soul begins to whisper reminders of the lives you didn't choose, the paths you abandoned, the words you never said, the courage you never claimed. It shows you the fragments of your unlived potential, like ghosts drifting through memory. You might feel it in a dream where you are someone freer, more courageous, or in a passing envy toward those who dare to express what you've kept buried. That ache, that quiet mourning for what could have been, is the voice of your shadow calling you home. Jung wrote that the shadow is everything the individual refuses to acknowledge about themselves, yet always thrusts itself upon them uninvited. It contains not only the darkness we repress, our anger, envy or fear, but also the light we never dared to live, our creativity, our authenticity, our truth. To live unconsciously is to exile parts of the soul. To live consciously is to invite them back. But this invitation is not gentle. When the unlived self begins to awaken, it does not come knocking softly. It breaks the walls. It appears as restlessness, depression, anxiety. It floods you with a sense that something vital is missing, even if everything appears fine. You may look around and think, I have done everything I was supposed to do. Why then does it feel like I am disappearing? Because somewhere deep inside, your real life waits untouched, like an unwritten novel gathering dust. You have been acting out a script written by others, family, culture, fear, while the authentic self watches from the sidelines, silent, patient, aching to live. The pain of existential despair often stems not from meaninglessness itself, but from this separation, the chasm between the life we live and the life that longs to be lived. We sense the gap every time we suppress our truth to maintain harmony, every time we betray our instincts for approval, every time we silence the voice that says, this isn't who I am, and yet we keep going, because society teaches us to prioritize belonging over authenticity, performance over presence. It rewards masks, not faces, but the soul cannot be fooled forever, so it begins to rebel quietly at first through dreams and discomfort, then louder through crisis and collapse. What we call a breakdown is often the soul's way of breaking through. Imagine standing before a mirror that doesn't reflect your surface, but your inner truth. You would see not the face you show to the world, but the one that stares out in silence when the world goes to sleep. That reflection would not judge you, but it would not lie to you either. It would show you who you've become and who you were meant to be. In that confrontation, despair deepens, not as punishment, but as revelation. Because when the unlived self stirs, it brings grief. You grieve the wasted time, the years spent pleasing others, the days traded for comfort instead of truth. But beneath the grief is something sacred. Potential Jung called it the gold in the shadow, the idea that within the parts of us we've rejected lies the exact energy we need to become whole. Your anger may hide your capacity for strength. Your envy may reveal your unlived desire. Your fear may point toward the path of your true calling. The very emotions you condemn might be the keys to your transformation. To face the unlived self is to perform an act of radical honesty. It is to look at the life you've built and admit, this is not enough. Not because it lacks comfort or success, but because it lacks truth. This is not arrogance, it is courage. The courage to feel the full weight of your unrealized life and not turn away. The courage to stand at the intersection of who you are and who you could be, and not collapse under the gravity of that distance. For this confrontation is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to awaken you. If you listen long enough, the unlived self begins to guide you, not with certainty, but with an intuitive pull. It whispers in art, in solitude, in the things that make you come alive without reason. It does not demand perfection. It asks for participation, for life is not a performance to perfect. It is an experience to embody. You begin to realize that despair was never a punishment. It was a signal, a compass pointing you back toward the forgotten territories of your soul. Every pang of emptiness was a message saying, there's more of you waiting to be found. And so the descent into despair transforms into a mirror, not one of condemnation but of invitation. It reflects both the tragedy of what you've lost and the miracle of what still can be. But this awareness comes with a cost. Once you've seen the gap between who you are and who you could be, you can no longer look away. The soul demands reconciliation, and if ignored, it will dismantle the false life piece by piece until truth is all that remains. This dismantling, this inner collapse, is not failure. It is the beginning of rebirth, because before anything new can emerge, the old must fall apart, And that collapse, that terrifying loss of meaning, is what awaits in the next descent, the moment when the structure of life itself begins to crumble. There is a sound that no one else can hear, the sound of meaning cracking. It begins quietly, like the faint strain of a bridge under too much weight. You carry on as usual, answering messages, keeping promises, maintaining the performance, until one day the structure gives way, and suddenly the world that once made sense doesn't. The familiar becomes foreign. Your ambitions lose flavor. Even your own reflection looks like a stranger. It's not that life itself has vanished. It's that the framework through which you once understood it has disintegrated. You are left standing amid the ruins of your own certainty, holding the fragments of beliefs that once anchored you. This is the collapse of meaning, the psychic earthquake that follows the awakening of consciousness. It arrives without warning, and it doesn't ask for permission. One day the world feels solid. The next it feels like smoke. Philosophers have called this the dark night of the soul. Jung called it enantiodromia, the turning of things into their opposite. What once felt like purpose now feels hollow. What once inspired you now leaves you cold. You begin to question everything, your choices, your relationships, even your own values. And in that questioning you meet an ancient terror, the possibility that there may be no fixed meaning at all. We are told that meaning is something given by culture, by religion, by success. We inherit stories that tell us who we are and what we should want. But those stories are fragile. They work only as long as you don't look too closely. The collapse begins the moment you do. When you start to see the artificiality of the narratives that shaped you. Be happy, be productive, be someone, but the scaffolding of borrowed meaning falls away. You realize that much of what you believed in was built not on truth, but on the collective fear of emptiness. And yet once that illusion breaks, there is no going back. You can't unknow what you've seen. You can't pretend the mask is your face. You can't return to sleep after you've glimpsed the void. Nietzsche described this experience with brutal precision when he declared, "God is dead." He didn't mean the literal death of divinity. He meant the death of unquestioned meaning, the death of the old foundations that once told us why we exist. But what he saw, and what few understand, is that the death of meaning is not the end of life. It is the beginning of freedom. Before rebirth, there must be ruin. Before truth, there must be disillusionment. When the old gods die, whether they are religious, social, or personal, they leave behind a void. And in that void, the soul begins its descent. At first, this descent feels unbearable. Without meaning, even the smallest acts, waking up, eating, speaking, can feel absurd. Time stretches into something almost cruel. Every day becomes a mirror reflecting your own confusion. You begin to feel as though you're walking through a world that continues to spin while you remain still. Others move with purpose. They talk about their plans, their goals, their future. And you stand among them, smiling faintly, playing your role while inside. A single question echoes, "What's the point?" But despair, as Jung reminded us, is not the absence of meaning. It is the collapse of false meaning. The psyche destroys its illusions the way a forest burns itself to make room for new growth. It's not destruction for the sake of pain. It's the beginning of renewal. To live through a collapse of meaning is to undergo a psychological death. Everything you once identified with begins to dissolve. Your roles, your titles, your ambitions, even your beliefs about yourself. It feels like losing your identity, but in truth it's the death of everything that was never you to begin with. You start to see how much of your life was lived for validation rather than truth. How much of your desire was inherited, not chosen. How much of what you called love was really fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being unseen. This realization doesn't come gently. It breaks you open, leaving you raw, trembling, uncertain. You may cry without knowing why. You may feel both too much and nothing at all. But if you look closely amid the ruin, you'll notice something strange. In the absence of borrowed meaning, a new kind of space appears, vast, empty, but alive. This emptiness is sacred. It is the silence before creation, the stillness before transformation. It is terrifying precisely because it offers no instructions. For the first time, you are not being told what life means. You are being asked to discover it. The self that emerges from this void is not the same one that entered it. The collapse forces you to rebuild your inner architecture from the ground up, not with second-hand truths, but with your own. It is through this psychological death that the ego begins its metamorphosis. The person you thought you were dies, so that the person you are destined to become can be born. The world calls this despair, but the mystics and philosophers knew better. They called it initiation. To lose meaning is to begin the search for real meaning. To be emptied is to become a vessel for something greater. This is why every myth begins with a descent into darkness, into chaos, into the unknown. Because only in losing the world as it was can we begin to see it as it truly is. The collapse of meaning, then, is not the end of the story. It is the threshold, a passage into the archetypal realm, the space where the psyche confronts its deepest symbols, fears and truths. And it is here, standing at the edge of that abyss, that the next stage of the journey begins. The descent into the archetype of transformation itself. Every true transformation begins with a fall. Not the graceful kind sung about in poems, but the violent descent that strips you of everything familiar. Beliefs, roles, comforts, certainties. The fall into despair is not random. It follows an ancient pattern, older than language, older even than the mind that fears it. It is the archetype of descent, the primordial journey into the underworld of the soul. When everything collapses, when life becomes unbearable in its emptiness, you are unknowingly reenacting the oldest story ever told. Every culture, every mythology, every religion speaks of it in some form. The story of the hero who is torn from the surface world and plunged into darkness. Orpheus descending into Hades. Inanna stripped of her jewels and hung on a hook in the underworld. Christ entering the tomb. Buddha facing Mara beneath the tree. These stories endure because they are not about gods. They are about us. They are blueprints of the psyche itself, written in the language of symbol and suffering. The descent represents the moment when consciousness is forced to face what it has denied. It is the point where every outer certainty is shattered, compelling us inward into the unknown. At first you resist. You cling to what remains of your old life, to the broken structures of meaning, to the voices that tell you you're overreacting, to the illusion that you can fix it all if you just try harder. But the archetype does not ask for your cooperation. It demands surrender. The more you resist, the deeper you're pulled. It's as if the ground beneath your feet gives way, and you find yourself falling not through space, but through layers of self-deception. Each layer reveals something you've avoided, the fear you never confronted, the grief you buried beneath achievement, the anger you mistook for strength, the shame you hid behind virtue. The underworld is not a place of punishment. It is the realm of truth. Here the masks cannot survive. You begin to see that your despair has a structure, that beneath its chaos lies intelligence, a kind of psychic order operating outside of your control. This is what Jung called the self-regulating nature of the psyche. The descent is not a breakdown. It's an initiation orchestrated by something deeper than the ego. The ego experiences it as death because, in a sense, it is dying. The false identity, the one built on adaptation and avoidance, cannot survive the underworld. Its language of productivity, control, and certainty has no power here. The only language the underworld understands is honesty. In myths, the descent always begins with loss. Something precious is taken. A loved one, a kingdom, a sense of direction. And in that loss, the protagonist is called below. Likewise, in life, the descent often begins with crisis. A breakup, a death, a failure, an illness, a moment of unbearable clarity. Something fractures and the ordinary world no longer feels solid. This is the call of the soul. Not a punishment, but a beckoning. It's the psyche's way of saying, there is something within you that must be faced. But the modern mind, conditioned to fear darkness, mistakes this call for pathology. We medicate, distract, rationalize. Anything to avoid going down. We try to stay positive, to move on, as though the soul were a problem to be solved rather than a mystery to be entered. Yet all great transformations require this descent. Without it, growth remains superficial. In the underworld, time loses its meaning. Days blur into nights. Progress cannot be measured. You may feel abandoned, unseen, even punished, but slowly, if you listen, you begin to hear another rhythm. A slower, deeper pulse beneath the chaos. It is the rhythm of the unconscious, the ancient intelligence that rebuilds what the ego cannot. Here the boundaries between life and death, self and other dissolve. Dreams become vivid. Symbols begin to speak. Intuition sharpens. You are no longer the director of your story. You are being rewritten by forces beyond your comprehension. This is the alchemy of descent. It is both annihilation and gestation, a dying and a becoming at once. Jung wrote that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. To descend is to meet that pain willingly, to hold its gaze until it reveals its face. You begin to see that what you feared most is not darkness itself, but the light it conceals. Every myth of descent ends not with death, but with return, yet the one who returns is never the same. They bring back something from below: wisdom, humility, truth, power. What was once despair becomes initiation. What was once collapse becomes passage. So when meaning collapses and you find yourself in free fall, remember, you are not lost. You are entering the oldest ritual known to the soul. The path through the underworld is not punishment. It is purification. You are being stripped not of your worth, but of your illusions. You are being emptied so that something greater can take form within you. The descent is terrifying because it feels like dying, but it is only through this symbolic death that rebirth becomes possible. And soon, when you have faced the darkness long enough, you will begin to notice something stirring there. A faint glimmer, a pulse, a quiet warmth emerging from the depths. This is the gift of the shadow, the hidden light that waits beneath despair. The next stage of the journey is not further downward, but inward, into the heart of the darkness itself, where you will discover that the thing you feared most has been trying to save you all along. In the beginning, the shadow terrifies us. We imagine it as a monstrous force, the dark, shameful side of our humanity, the hidden chamber of everything we were taught to suppress. But the longer we dwell in the underworld, the more we see that the shadow is not evil. It is exiled truth. The shadow is the part of the psyche that holds everything the conscious self rejected in order to survive. It is our anger, our grief, our hunger for power, our envy, yes, but it is also our creativity, our sensuality, our courage, our authenticity. It contains the raw, unfiltered energy of life itself, everything the ego deemed too much, too strange, or too dangerous to express. When the descent strips away the surface self, the shadow begins to stir. It speaks in dreams, in outbursts, in strange fascinations and irrational fears. It shows up in the people we despise and the qualities we condemn, because what we reject in others often mirrors what we've banished in ourselves. Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. To face the shadow is not to fight it. It is to listen to it, to understand why it was cast away." Every shadow carries a story, and every story begins with pain. Think of a child punished for crying, and so she learns to bury her sensitivity beneath sarcasm. Think of a boy shamed for showing fear, and so he becomes cold and rigid, mistaking numbness for strength. Think of the artist told their dreams are impractical, who grows into an efficient adult and secretly dies a little each day. These disowned fragments do not vanish. They hide in the dark, waiting. And when life breaks down, when meaning collapses, when the persona crumbles, the door to that hidden room creaks open. The shadows emerge, not to haunt you, but to return home. Yet integration does not begin with peace. It begins with confrontation. You may find yourself overwhelmed by emotions you thought you'd outgrown: anger, jealousy, desire, fear. You may feel impulses that contradict the image you've built of yourself. This is the moment when most people turn back. They say, "This isn't me," but the truth is, it is you, the part you left behind. The shadow doesn't come to destroy your light. It comes to remind you that your light was never whole without it. The process of integration is an act of radical compassion. It means standing before your darkness and saying, "I see you. I know you're part of me. Let's learn how to live together." It is not about glorifying pain or indulging chaos. It is about reclaiming the totality of who you are. You begin to see that the things you feared most within yourself were not enemies, but messengers. Your anger was protecting your boundaries. Your envy was showing you what you secretly desired. Your sadness was asking for rest, for truth, for authenticity. When you stop running from these energies, they transform. Anger becomes strength. Envy becomes aspiration. Sadness becomes wisdom. The energy that once fueled despair now becomes the engine of creation. This is the shadow's gift, transformation through reconciliation. It offers power but not domination, freedom but not chaos. It gives you back the parts of yourself that the world demanded you bury in order to fit in. The integrated person is not flawless. They are whole. They have made peace with contradiction. They have learned to hold light and darkness in the same breath, and this wholeness radiates an authenticity that cannot be faked. Others may call it confidence or charisma, but it is deeper than that. It is the magnetic presence of someone who no longer hides from themselves. Yet there is danger here too. The shadow, if unacknowledged, possesses us, but if romanticized, it deceives us. To worship darkness is as foolish as denying it. Integration requires balance, a dialogue between awareness and instinct, between discipline and surrender. This is the inner alchemy Jung spoke of, the union of opposites. In the crucible of the psyche, the raw lead of the shadow is transmuted into gold, the gold of wisdom, compassion, creativity, and authentic power. The alchemist within you learns that the goal was never to banish darkness, but to make it conscious, to turn it from a destructive force into a guiding light. The process is not linear. Some days you will feel illuminated, full of insight and clarity. Other days the darkness will rise again, and you'll wonder if anything has changed. But even those regressions are part of the rhythm. The psyche breathes in cycles, not straight lines. Each confrontation with the shadow deepens your humanity. You begin to see others differently, not as villains or heroes, but as fractured mirrors of your own complexity. Compassion grows naturally, because you recognize in everyone the same struggle for wholeness that lives in you. In myth, when the hero faces the monster, he doesn't always slay it. Sometimes he realizes the monster was guarding the treasure all along. The darkness was not blocking the path, it was the path. When you embrace this truth, something extraordinary happens. The energy once trapped in repression becomes available to your life again. You feel more alive, more creative, more rooted in reality. Not because the pain has disappeared, but because it has meaning now. The shadow's gift is not comfort, it is vitality. It returns to you the full spectrum of experience, joy and grief, courage and fear, desire and restraint. It allows you to live not half a life, but a full one. And so, the descent that began as despair becomes the ground of rebirth. The underworld was never hell. It was the womb of your transformation. You emerge not purified but integrated, not innocent but wise. You have learned that wholeness is not found in escaping darkness, but in learning to carry it with grace. Now from this union of shadow and self, something even greater begins to unfold. The alchemical fire that refines all suffering into meaning. It is time to step into the next chamber of transformation, where pain itself becomes the raw material of enlightenment. There is a moment in every descent when the pain stops feeling like punishment and starts to feel like purpose. Not because it lessens, but because you begin to see what it's doing to you. Something inside is being burned away, yes, but something else, something rarer, is being forged in its place. This is the mystery of alchemy, transformation through fire. And suffering, though we fear it, is the oldest and most sacred fire there is. For centuries, alchemists sought to turn lead into gold, but those who understood the true symbolism knew they were never talking about metal. The lead was the heavy matter of the soul, despair, loss, fear, guilt. The gold was consciousness, purified, awakened, illuminated through pain. Suffering in this way is the philosopher's stone of the psyche. It dissolves the false and reveals the real. It exposes every illusion we cling to, every comfort that kept us asleep. It is the process through which the ego dies and the soul begins to speak. In the depths of suffering, the self is forced to confront its limits. You can no longer hide behind distraction or control. You can't negotiate with pain or think your way out of it. You are stripped bare, brought to the edge of what you can endure, and in that edge something holy begins to emerge, because suffering, when faced consciously, doesn't just destroy, it clarifies. It refines the soul like fire refines metal, burning away what is not essential. It teaches you to see your own fragility, to see the transient nature of everything you once thought permanent, to see that love, loss, and longing are all intertwined, that the beauty of life is inseparable from its impermanence. Most of us spend our lives avoiding pain as if comfort were the highest good. We numb, distract, escape, mistaking anesthesia for peace. But true peace is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of depth. Only when you allow yourself to feel fully, the grief, the loneliness, the rage, do you begin to contact the indestructible core beneath it. There, beneath the chaos, you discover what can't be burned. Jung often described this process as individuation, the psyche's movement toward wholeness. He understood that suffering was not a detour on this path, but the very terrain itself. The soul's evolution demands friction. Without conflict, there can be no synthesis. Without tension, no transformation. The ancient mystics knew this too. They spoke of the dark night of the soul, not as a curse, but as divine necessity. A purgation, a sacred unmaking. For only through the destruction of false light can the true light emerge. In modern life, we are taught to flee the dark, to move on, to think positive. But positivity is sterile without depth. It's the kind of light that blinds rather than illuminates. Real transformation requires the courage to sit inside the fire, to allow the flames to reshape you without demanding that they stop. Because suffering has its own intelligence. It knows what needs to go. It burns away pride, ego, naivety, and fear, leaving behind something raw, tender, and profoundly real. When you stop resisting it, you begin to sense that the fire isn't there to destroy you. It's there to reveal you. Imagine gold being melted. It screams, it loses shape, it liquefies into chaos. But in that molten state, impurities separate and what remains is purer than before. The gold doesn't die in the fire. It becomes itself through the fire, so it is with us. Our suffering strips us of everything borrowed, everything false, until only authenticity remains. Pain shows us what is ours and what was merely inherited. It reveals what cannot be taken from us, because it was never external to begin with. This is not romanticism, it is truth seen from the other side of despair. When you are in the midst of suffering, it feels endless, meaningless. But meaning is not something given. It's something born, and pain is the midwife. Meaning arises when suffering is no longer just endured but understood. You begin to see patterns, how your heartbreak expanded your capacity for empathy, how your failure humbled you into wisdom, how your loneliness deepened your ability to love. It doesn't make the suffering pleasant, but it makes it sacred. There's a reason all spiritual traditions speak of rebirth through pain. The seed must crack to let the sprout emerge. The shell must break for the light to enter. The ego must dissolve for the soul to expand. Every death in your life, and every loss, every humiliation, every collapse is a small alchemical act. It tears away one more layer of illusion until only truth remains. And the truth, when finally faced, is not cruel. It is vast, it is merciful, it is real. The alchemy of suffering teaches the final paradox of awakening, that what feels like the end is often the beginning. The pain you resist most fiercely may be the exact doorway through which your next self is waiting to emerge. To the unawakened, suffering is meaningless cruelty. To the awakening soul, it is sacred instruction. It whispers, "Die to what you were so you may live as what you are." And when you finally surrender, when you stop trying to escape the fire and let it consume you, you discover what every mystic, every hero, every philosopher eventually learned, that you are not the one burning, you are the fire itself. From this recognition, something begins to shift. The chaos that once frightened you now feels alive with possibility. The emptiness that once haunted you now hums with quiet meaning. You realize that suffering was not merely an obstacle to awakening, it was awakening. And from that flame, a new kind of light begins to rise, not blinding but gentle, not external but born from within. The light of integration, the light of meaning, the light that emerges after the fire. It is time now to rise from the ashes, to rediscover the world with new eyes, and to find the quiet beauty that grows from the soil of despair. After the fire there is silence, not the kind born of emptiness, but the silence that follows revelation, when everything false has burned away and only the essential remains. You stand amid the ashes of your former life, but something has changed. The air feels lighter. The pain that once devoured you now glows faintly, like embers that no longer destroy but illuminate. This is the dawn after despair, the quiet emergence of meaning. For a long time you searched for meaning as if it were hidden somewhere out there, in careers, relationships, philosophies, beliefs. You begged the universe for an answer, hoping that life would one day reveal its purpose. But now, after everything has been stripped away, you begin to see meaning was never something to be found. It was something to be made. Meaning is not a treasure buried in the world. It is a flame you kindle within yourself, and the spark that ignites it is consciousness, the act of being aware, alive and awake enough to create value where none is given. Viktor Frankl, who endured the darkest depths of human suffering, once said, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." But what he discovered, and what you now begin to feel, is that the why is not handed to you. It's something born from your own participation with life. You are no longer asking, "What does life mean?" You are asking, "What can I give meaning to?" It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. It transforms you from a seeker into a creator, from a passive observer of existence into its co-author. You start to see beauty in ordinary things again, not because they have inherent meaning, but because you bring meaning to them. A sunrise becomes a reminder of resilience. A conversation becomes a moment of connection. A scar becomes a story, not a wound. You realize that life doesn't owe you purpose. You are the one who must breathe purpose into it. And paradoxically, in accepting that responsibility, you feel freer than ever before, because when meaning is no longer external, nothing can take it from you. Not failure, not loss, not even death. The emergence of meaning is not an ecstatic revelation, it's a gentle unfolding. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or divine voices. It arrives in whispers, in the slow return of curiosity, in the rediscovery of gratitude, in the simple act of being present enough to feel life again. You begin to understand that despair was not your enemy. It was the womb from which meaning was born. Without the collapse, you would have never questioned. Without the fire, you would have never purified. Without the darkness, you would have never learned how to see. This is the paradox of awakening. Meaning arises because life is fragile, fleeting, uncertain. Its transience gives it value. The flower's beauty is intensified by its inevitable decay. Love's sweetness is deepened by the knowledge that it cannot last forever. In learning to accept impermanence, you stop seeking eternal certainty and start participating in the miracle of the moment. Meaning is no longer something abstract or distant. It becomes embodied in your daily existence. Every act of kindness, every honest conversation, every moment of awareness becomes sacred. Not because it will last, but because it won't. Nietzsche called this amor fati, the love of one's fate. To not merely endure life as it is, but to embrace it, joy and suffering alike, as necessary, beautiful whole. You begin to see that everything you resisted was part of the same design that brought you here. You don't have to forgive the past. You only have to understand it. You don't have to erase your pain. You only have to realize that it was trying to lead you somewhere. And now, standing here, aware, grounded, alive, you see that it succeeded. This is the quiet redemption of despair. It gave you back your freedom. You no longer need to chase meaning in external achievements, because you've discovered that meaning is a state of consciousness. It's the recognition that even in suffering, even in imperfection, there is beauty, and that your awareness of it is the bridge between chaos and grace. You begin to live differently. You listen more deeply. You create without expectation. You love without guarantee. You speak not to impress but to connect. And though life remains unpredictable, though sorrow and uncertainty still visit you, you no longer see them as intruders. They are part of the same rhythm, the same sacred dance of becoming. The emergence of meaning doesn't erase despair. It transforms it. What was once a wound becomes a window. What was once emptiness becomes spaciousness. You realize that meaning is not found in avoiding pain, but in allowing it to reveal what matters most. And so, you begin to return to the world, not as the same person who once sought comfort in illusions, but as someone who can stand in the tension between chaos and beauty and call it life. The light you found in the fire now guides you back, not away from the world, but into it, where you will learn to live again with eyes open, heart open and soul unafraid. Because the journey was never about escaping the darkness. It was about discovering the light that only darkness could reveal. There comes a point in every transformation when the light must return to the surface. The cave, the underworld, the silence, they were never meant to be permanent homes. They were sanctuaries, wombs of rebirth. And now, having descended through despair and emerged with new sight, the soul must do the hardest thing of all, to live again. At first, the return feels strange. You walk through familiar streets, but something within you no longer belongs entirely to them. You watch people chase what you once chased, status, certainty, distraction, and you feel a mix of sadness and compassion. You understand now that most are not asleep by choice. They are protecting themselves from the depth you've been forced to face. It would be easy to retreat again, to remain in the solitude of your awakening, to keep your light hidden like a secret flame. But the purpose of illumination is not escape. It is integration. You realize that enlightenment is not about rising above the world. It is about returning to it with new eyes. The return is quiet, almost invisible. There is no triumph, no applause. Your outer life may look the same job, the same conversations, the same routines, but everything has shifted in tone. The smallest gestures now hold weight. The ordinary feels sacred. You begin to sense the pulse of meaning running beneath daily life, a thread connecting laughter and grief, chaos and order, suffering and beauty. The same world that once felt unbearable now feels alive with presence. The same silence that once terrified you now feels full of music. Integration means walking with both the divine and the human. You still feel anger, longing, sadness, fear, but they no longer define you. They pass through you like weather across an open sky. You've learned that peace is not the absence of storms, but the space that holds them. You no longer chase perfection. You live instead with sincerity, with a quiet commitment to being awake within imperfection. You make peace with paradox. You can be broken and whole at once, sorrowful and grateful in the same breath. This is the art of returning, the art of living with both hands open. You start to bring your inner transformation into the outer world, not by preaching, but by presence. Your calm becomes contagious. Your compassion disarms people. Your honesty gives others permission to remove their masks. You understand now that awakening is not meant to isolate the awakened. It's meant to ripple outward, quietly altering the consciousness of those who come near you. You become unknowingly a lighthouse, not by trying to save anyone, but by standing still and shining from within. And yet you also know that darkness will return, not as an enemy, but as a rhythm. There will be days when meaning fades again, when despair revisits like an old ghost, but this time you do not panic. You understand that descent and ascent are not opposites. They are partners in an eternal cycle. The light you carry now is not fragile. It was forged in fire. You can descend without drowning, suffer without despairing, love without possessing. You have become fluent in the language of opposites, the dialect of the human soul. In returning to the world, you realize that nothing external has changed, and yet everything has. Because meaning, once internalized, colors everything it touches. You can find transcendence in washing dishes, revelation in a conversation, eternity in a fleeting sunset. Life no longer needs to prove itself to you. It is enough simply to be, and in that quiet acceptance, that seamless blending of the ordinary and the divine, you find a kind of grace that words can barely touch. You have learned what the mystics and poets have always known, that awakening was never about escaping the human experience, but sanctifying it. It was about learning to live fully within the world, while belonging also, and as something beyond it. And as you step forward, into the noise, the laughter, the work, the love, you realize you have not left the underworld behind. You carry it within you now, as a sacred reminder of where your light was born. This is the quiet triumph of the awakened, to return to the marketplace with open hands, to smile at strangers as if each one were a reflection of the infinite, and to walk the world not seeking meaning, but creating it with every breath. The descent is complete, the circle closes, and what was once despair has become understanding, a luminous, living wisdom that hums softly beneath the pulse of everyday life. When everything has been stripped away, when the fire has burned, the darkness has spoken, and silence has done its work, something extraordinary remains. Not triumph, not certainty, but stillness. It is the stillness of a soul that has stopped running, the stillness of someone who has looked directly into despair and found, to their astonishment, not death but depth. You stand at the quiet edge of your own becoming, where words lose meaning and only awareness remains. The same awareness that once cursed you with unbearable sensitivity now feels like grace. The same despair that once hollowed you out has become spacious, a vastness where the sacred can breathe. You begin to understand what the mystics meant when they said that despair and beauty are not opposites, but reflections of one another, because only when the heart breaks wide open can it truly hold the world. Despair was not the absence of meaning. It was the beginning of it. It forced you to see life without illusion, and in doing so it revealed the quiet, hidden beauty that lies beneath everything. The flower blooming in the crack of concrete, the child's laughter cutting through a moment of grief, the way light still filters through broken glass. These small things were always there. You just couldn't see them until despair tore away the noise that covered them. You realize now that despair is not the enemy of beauty. Hate is the doorway to perceiving it. Hate humbles you, strips you of arrogance, and softens you to the tender pulse of being. It teaches you to see with the eyes of the soul, eyes that no longer demand perfection, only presence. There is a strange tenderness that follows awakening, a gentleness toward all things, including yourself. You no longer rush to fix or justify life. You no longer demand that it makes sense. You let it be, tragic, radiant, fleeting, miraculous. You have learned that the task was never to eliminate suffering, but to find the beauty that lives within it, the kind that doesn't deny pain, but embraces it as part of the same sacred whole, because despair was always love in disguise, love for what is fleeting, love for what cannot last, love for the fragile miracle of simply being here. You understand now that to be human is to live between opposites, between despair and wonder, loss and love, darkness and light. And meaning arises not from choosing one side, but from holding both with equal reverence. You no longer seek escape from life's impermanence. You dance with it. You no longer search for eternal answers. You listen instead for the quiet questions that make you more alive. This is what it means to awaken, not to transcend life, but to fall more deeply in love with it. To see that despair was never a mistake, but an initiation. To realize that every wound was an opening, every ending a kind of birth, and so as the journey closes, there is no final revelation, only a quiet knowing that beauty and despair are twins, that light is born from darkness, that awareness itself is both the wound and the cure. You breathe in softly. You feel the pulse of life moving through you, fragile, fleeting, infinite. You understand that existence is not meant to be solved, but experienced, not endured, but embraced, and in that acceptance you whisper to yourself as if speaking to the entire universe, there was never anything to fix, only something to see. You smile, not because the pain is gone, but because you can finally see the beauty that was hidden inside it all along.